Hi, I'm Dr. Rebecca Oliver, and welcome to this presentation on test anxiety. This video is based on a presentation that was originally created by Danielle Eberick, the director of the Student Success Commons at York County Community College, and me. I am a tutor in the Student Success Commons as well as an instructor in the Natural Sciences Department at York County Community College. Together, Danielle and I created this presentation to give students some understanding of test anxiety and techniques to combat it. This video is a recreation of that seminar, and I will be your presenter. So let's get started.
So, what is test anxiety? Well, anxiety is a physiological response you feel due to some sort of stress, and test anxiety is the response to the stress you feel going into a testing situation. But an even better way to answer that is to perhaps describe what it feels like. So, you might feel your heart racing, and that's called heart palpitations. You may feel sick to your stomach. You may have a headache, perhaps due to all the tension. Your breathing may become fast and shallow, which can then make you feel faint. You may feel fear or anger or frustration. You may even have a sense of doom. And perhaps worst of all, you lack the ability to concentrate. So these are all the possible symptoms of test anxiety, things that you might experience going into an exam. All of these symptoms are the body's response to stress. And what has happened is that you've engaged the fight or flight response. This is a response to stress that is modulated by the sympathetic nervous system. And the whole purpose of this response is to engage as many body resources as possible in an emergency situation. This is a system that gets engaged when you need to run from a wild animal or if you need to fight to defend yourself. And in those situations, this system is great. It allows you to run as fast as you can. It enables you to lift heavy objects. It allows you to do things that you might not be able to do under ordinary circumstances. And all of this means it improves your chances of surviving some sort of a threat. But during an exam, this is not so good. So, why do we get test anxiety? Well, it's because it's a combination of emotions we feel going into the exam, the physical symptoms created by engaging the fight or fight response, and the resulting cognitive impairment. Now, a little test anxiety is actually a good thing. In fact, it can enhance your performance. The problem arises when the anxiety response becomes overwhelming and interferes with your ability to concentrate and recall information. But there's some good news because there are ways to deal with this, and we're going to talk about those in this presentation. If you suffer from test anxiety, you might like knowing that you're not alone. It's actually fairly common. 38% of students have moderate to severe test anxiety. That's almost 40% of all students. And even though it's common, it still has impact on academic performance. Students with test anxiety come in 12 percentile points lower than their peers who do not suffer from test anxiety. So it's worth the effort to address the stress and to learn how to decrease it. And there are a variety of treatments available, some of which you can begin doing today. Now, if you want to read about professional help, you can read about other options at the American Test Anxiety Association website, and I have their web address listed on the bottom of this slide. So we've defined test anxiety, we've talked about what it feels like, we've talked about how common it is, and we've talked about the effects that it can have on your grade. So let's answer the question of what are some common causes? And there's three. The first one is fear of failure. Often students tie their self-worth to their test scores, and this creates an immense amount of pressure, which will create anxiety. Another one is history of doing badly on exams. This will create a negative attitude about test taking. Now, there could be many reasons why you did badly on an exam in the past. Perhaps you just didn't know how to study, or maybe you just didn't study. Or maybe you put so much pressure on yourself that despite having studied, you created so much stress that it impaired your ability to focus. Whatever it is, this history of having done badly in the past can create anxiety today. And the third most common cause is unpreparedness. You lacked the preparedness needed for the exam. You didn't study, or maybe you just crammed a few hours the night before and you really didn't study enough. Well, whatever it is, this will lead to anxiety because you know walking into that exam that you're not ready, yet that you didn't do the work needed to get the grade. Well, the good news is that each of these can be addressed with a little bit of effort, and that means that you can quickly find your way on the road to test-taking success. So we're going to go into some techniques that you can begin doing right now that'll help you alleviate and reduce that test anxiety. So if you don't have anything to write with and write on, I suggest that you pause the video and go grab something and then come back. All right, so what are we going to do? We're talking about preparing for the test weeks before the test. So what are you going to do? Well, one of the things that you want to do is you want to set up and follow some sort of a study schedule. Now here's the thing. The body likes routine, which is why we respond well to schedules. Now at the same time, as you move through your course, there's going to be those weeks during the term where the demands may be lighter or they may be heavier. So you need to have some flexibility built into your schedule. Don't make it so rigid that you don't have the ability to ease up when you need to or to bear down when you need to. Now, when you have those lighter weeks, something that I recommend you do is that you do a little bit more to get ahead. It seems that looking ahead causes your mind to change gears and it puts you in the driver's seat for a little bit. And that sense of control that you get goes a long way to helping you build confidence and to alleviate stress. And that's what we're all about, alleviating stress. The next thing you can do is you can have several study spots in your home or even around campus. You might even have some extra spots included in your favorite coffee shops or some place where you can stop in for a few hours, get something to drink, whatever it is. What the whole point is that it's important that you have some places where you don't have to worry about being interrupted and where you can be very comfortable and allow for some quality focus time. The third thing is that you need to find your effective study technique. Now, some people make flashcards. Some people like to write out questions. There's a lot of right ways to study. And here's the deal with study techniques. Your needs may change. They may change over time. They may change according to the type of course you're taking. So what's important is that you be open to finding effective ways to get information into your brain. And your techniques might not work over the entirety of one course. You might end up using several different techniques over one course. Whatever it is, be open to it, be willing to analyze what you're doing, and just make sure you're not spinning your wheels. Also, as you study, think about how you would explain the material to someone. I teach chemistry on campus, and one of the tips that I give my students when they set about studying for different things is I tell them that if you can explain the concept as if you were telling it to a 10-year-old, then you know the material. So study as if you were going to teach the material to someone else. Now, when you're dealing with test anxiety, according to the American Test Anxiety Association, one of the most effective ways to reduce stress is to desensitize yourself to test-taking situations. That means expose yourself to as many test-taking sort of situations as you can. Now, how do you do that? Well, on your own, you can just test yourself. Your flashcards are a way to do that. If your instructor gives you course objectives for a chapter, draft questions from those objectives and give your answers. Write them out. Speak your answers. Both are great ways to reinforce learning. And here's the other thing about studying. Once you realize what you know, then focus on the areas where you still have some fuzziness. So as you go about studying and answering questions, put a check or some sort of a notation that says, I know this, now I can move on from that concept and focus on the areas where I still need a little bit more attention. So that's an effective way to hone in on what you don't know by letting go what you do know. That's important to do as well. If you've been given a homework set, rework them. Again, this is another technique to desensitize yourself to these sorts of challenges. So look at the homework problems and redo them. Again, you're testing yourself to see what you know and what you don't know. And what may be the important takeaway with these last two items is that when you test yourself, when you do the dive into those fuzzy areas where you lack understanding, you are chipping away at the things that will create stress come test day. So you'll walk into test day and you will be firm in what you know, and you will also be firm in what you might not be so comfortable with. And that goes a long way to alleviating stress. So it's the day before the exam. What are you going to do? Well, there's some things you can do to help yourself. Number one is you can actually ask the instructor about the exam. How's it structured? So most instructors will gladly tell you about how the exam is crafted, about how many multiple choice questions there are, how many matching, how many calculations, if there's short answers, all that sort of stuff. And knowing that can help demystify what you're going to see come exam day, particularly if you've never had an exam from that instructor before. So don't be shy, ask that question. The worst the instructor can say is, I'm not going to tell you. And if they do tell you, then certainly write it down, because that will help you formulate a plan going into the testing situation. Everybody does well on different types of questions, and having some idea about what you might face will allow you to develop a strategy come the day of the exam. Another thing, don't cram. Avoid the last minute cram session. The neural pathways that are formed when you study and learn, they're strengthened when you study a little bit each day. You're building new neural pathways. You're actually building new neural networks when you learn. And they're like walking any other pathway. The more times you go down it, the more you get to know it. And the same thing is true with your brains and learning. Pretty much by the time it's the day before the exam, you're done studying. So don't fool yourself with that last minute cram session. Review your notes, yes, but don't try to cram and get it in all at the last minute. Eat well and eat sensibly during before an exam, not during an exam, but definitely before. Have breakfast if your exam is in the morning. Eat lunch if it's in the afternoon. You don't want to run the risk of having your blood sugar drop during an exam, because in addition to whatever test anxiety you're already experiencing, low blood sugar can create stress and make you feel really off your game and impair your ability to think well. Make sure you get enough sleep the night before. Again, that's part of avoiding the last minute cram session. When you learn, you're working your brain cells, and this means that they are gobbling up glucose from your blood like crazy. It also means that they're making waste products like crazy. And do you know when the brain does its housekeeping? When you sleep. So yes, sleep well the night before an exam, because you want to go into that exam with a clean brain. A clean brain is a brain that thinks well. All right, now it's the day of the exam. What are you going to do? Well, one thing that is extremely important is your mindset and your self-talk. Often students have unreasonable expectations, such as, oh, I must get a 98 or better on this exam to pass the course, or if I fail, I'll die. Those sorts of extremes don't do you any favors, so avoid those sorts of talks. And the reason why students often say those things is because how grades are calculated is often a mystery. But there are ways for you to calculate your grade and to figure out how well you need to do on an exam in order to get the grade that you want. Your instructor may be able to help you with this, or maybe an academic coach. So if that's a problem, there are ways to solve that. So get that out of the way. The other thing that students do is revisit past failures, or at least perceived failures, and say things to themselves that reinforce those experiences. Things like, oh, I never do well on exams, or my sister's always the smart one in the family, or I'll fail this one just like I fail all the other exams, or I hate exams. Now, all of those are going to set you up for some sort of a negative experience. And here's the deal. This exam today that you have in front of you is a new opportunity. It's a new opportunity to apply all of the skills that you've been using leading up to this day. And as a result of the work that you've done, you are now a different person today than you were a few weeks ago. And you can alter your self-talk. You're not married to that. You don't have to accept the old language of the past. You can change it to something like, I've done good work and I'm as prepared as I can be. That's a perfectly legitimate statement. Your body knows that it's true, and it doesn't create any anxiety. And it's realistic. You know that there's going to be things you're going to miss, and you know there's going to be things that you are going to get right. So give yourself some credit and be a little bit forgiving of yourself as well. You can also say things like, there may be a couple of questions that I won't be able to answer right then, but I can answer others. So with your self-talk, you begin to set the stage for success on exam day and shave off some of that anxiety that's kind of lurking in the background. All right, so you're arriving at the exam. What are you going to do? Well, you want to get to the classroom early. You want to get your favorite seat if you can. You want to get out all of your supplies, your pens, your pencils, your calculator, your charts, whatever it is that you need. And then you want to set yourself up with all your tools. If your course is online, you want to do the same thing. Get yourself comfortable, get out all of your supplies, your pens, your pencils, your calculator, your charts, whatever it is you need. And then you want to breathe, take a few deep breaths. Your body really likes that, and it changes your physiology, and it basically is saying it's okay, and your body will respond to that. And then do yourself your positive self-talk. All right, I can do this. I've done good work, and I can do my best. So that's when your positive self-talk starts, is in those moments before you actually get the exam. All right, here comes the exam. What are you going to do first? Well, I recommend that you read the whole thing over. See how it's crafted. Now, there are always parts of an exam that are going to be easier for you than other parts. And maybe you want to start working those parts first, you know, to build your confidence. Or maybe you look it over and you see that there is this one area that you can do first where you can earn the most points first. Whatever it is that you choose, however you choose to craft your approach, get familiar with the document. Give yourself some sort of a goal or structure or strategy as you begin working the exam. Read each question a little bit slowly. I know it's going to feel like it's taking forever, but it's likely taking even less than a second to just slow down a little bit and read that question. And even if it is a second, that second is an investment in focus. It's an investment on your performance. It's an investment in your grade. And as you read, focus on one question at a time and do your positive self-talk and breathe. All right, so what happens if you're starting to feel a little bit panicky? Well, you want to take a moment and you want to visualize yourself in a safe place, someplace comfortable. See, here's the deal. Your body and your bodily responses react to your thoughts. Your muscle doesn't have eyes to see. It's relying on these eyes. Your body doesn't know anything other than what your brain is telling it. So if you are telling your brain, oh no, here it comes, then your body's going to brace for, oh no, here it comes. But if you start to tell yourself, hey, I've got the exam, it's okay, I can breathe, and this is going to be fine, then your body will say, oh, okay, all right, and it will respond to that. Now, how are you going to do that when you're in a testing situation, you start to feel that rise of anxiety coming? Well, I would recommend that you imagine that you're at your favorite coffee shop or on the couch in your living room or whatever your favorite study spot is. And the reason why you want to do that is that this will cause your body to go into the same physical state associated with those comfortable places where you're feeling secure and confident. So you're giving your body this input to short circuit that anxiety response, or at least to reduce it and set yourself up for success. So the exam is now sitting in front of you. What are you going to do? Well, one thing you want to make sure you're doing is listening to any last-minute instructions from the instructor. Sometimes the instructor will give you a little bit of something in that last-minute set of instructions that may help you. So jot down a note if they're giving you any last-minute instructions. You want to make sure that you check your mental state. Are you doing your positive self-talk? Is there any negative talk going on in there? So monitor what you're saying to yourself and make sure that you're giving yourself reasonable talk to reassure yourself and ensure your success. And make sure you breathe. Breathing is really important, so do that. All right. So, and like I said earlier, it's very important that you read over the exam first, because this is going to help you develop an approach regarding where you spend your time. This is so important that I included in this slide, and I included it in the previous slide, and I'll probably say it again before we're done. So read the exam over. This will help you set your pace to ensure that you complete the exam within the allotted time, because you're going to know what you have to do. All right, so how are you going to be able to get the most points right off the bat? I recommend reading the instructions. Sometimes they're just as simple as fill in the blank or give me the correct answer, but sometimes they are very specific, particularly if it's a word problem where you're being asked to give an answer in a particular frame of reference or in a particular units if it's a math or physics problem of some sort. So be sure you read the instructions for the section if there are any. Make sure you read the instructions for a problem if they're there. So make sure that you know what the instructor wants from you so you can answer that question. So this next bit gets into some real strategy, and it's going to require that you rely on your first instincts. So what is this going to look like? Well, you want to answer familiar questions first and answer difficult questions later. Now, this is where your preparation truly pays off because there will be those topics that you absolutely know. And when you give those answers, you've helped establish some confidence in yourself. And now, what about those difficult questions? Well, often when taking an exam, you'll come across something somewhere else in the exam that may jog your memory or may help you with answering a different question. So look for those connections as you read the exam. And by all means, give an answer for every question. You will absolutely get it wrong if you leave it blank, but you might get some points if you at least give an answer. And finally, trust your first answer. Only if in the course of taking the exam you discover that you gave a wrong answer, and only then would I recommend changing it. And I mean, you need to make sure, absolutely sure, that you know what the right answer is. Do not guess. I've given a lot of exams in 20 years of teaching, and I have had to mark more right answers wrong because I could see that the right answer had been erased and another answer had been put in its place. So trust your first instinct. Only go back if you absolutely know. Don't guess. Just leave it and go. Think positively. This is another area where your preparation truly pays off. Let's say that you've just answered 10 questions correctly. You've now proven to yourself that you can do this. And this is an important step in helping you change your trajectory and moving you toward a less anxious test-taking experience. So yes, tell yourself you can do this because you can. Now, what most people don't understand is that what we think creates a physical response in the body. And if you allow your thoughts to run wild, you create that racing heart and those panicky feelings. If you think about sitting next to a beautiful stream, listening to the gentle sounds of distant birds and the light rustling of the leaves from a gentle breeze, your body creates a physical response to that thought. Now, controlling your thoughts is a skill, and it takes a bit of practice, but it can be done. So start working on it today. And that little bit of imagery I just gave you about sitting next to a stream and listening to the birds and the gentle breeze, that's a good one to start with. And focus. Okay, so how do we know that we're focusing when we're feeling anxiety creeping in? Well, what I recommend is that you read a question. Read the question on the exam. Put your attention on one question. Read it just a tad slowly. Maybe read it with a foreign accent, but just focus on one question. Circle any keywords in the question. This will help you focus on the topic of the question and could very well help you come up with the answer. And then there's always this technique, rephrase the question. Sometimes the wording of a question is challenging, so try to ask it in a different way. For me, the ones that are always problematic are, which of the following statements is false? Those sorts of questions. So I read those and I rephrase it to, well, let's see, everything here is true except one. So I always try to rephrase those difficult things that I know are challenging for me. And if all of those fail, ask the instructor to rephrase the question for you. It's possible that the instructor may say no, but here's the deal. The instructor knows the concept that's important for you to demonstrate and more than likely will help you by rephrasing that question. All right, but what if you're still having all those anxious feelings? Well, I have a few more things to share. In this part of the talk, we're going to go over these techniques that you see over here, and these are going to be physical things that you do in order to help your brain get rewired and engage correctly and focus. So I will be demonstrating these in the next few slides. Now, what we're going to talk about next has its basis in kinesiology. And kinesiology is, in the broadest sense, the study of movement. And the study of movement and learning has its basis in the work of Paul Dennison. Paul Dennison was a reading specialist who worked with challenged children, and after some training, he was able to show the effects of movement upon learning. He would teach children different ways of moving, and their learning skills would improve, their reading improved. And from his work, there was a technique developed called educational kinesiology, and it was later basically rebranded as Brain Gym. And if you would like to read more about Paul Dennison, here's his website, Hearts at Play. And what I'm going to be introducing you to today are a couple of techniques that come from Paul Dennison's work. So this first technique involves a couple of acupuncture points called K27, and they're located just underneath the collarbone. So here's my collarbone right here, and just underneath there's kind of a little bit of a dippy inny part, and it's on either side of your sternum, which is your breastbone right here. And this is a nice, easy way to place your hands. Your fingers fit nicely right there. So you want to put a couple of fingers over each one of these points. And then I'm going to move my camera down so you can see what I'm doing with my other hand. And with my other hand, I'm going to place the palm side of my hand over my navel. And I'm just going to do a little wiggle up here. And I want to make sure that I'm breathing. Just breathe in normally, breathe out. And then you want to switch hands, and they go in the same place, and you want to repeat. Now, you don't have to make a big production of this. And in fact, once you learn how to do it, you may actually learn that people are doing it around you all the time. This is something that I do a lot when I'm in a meeting and I'm starting to feel some anxiety creep in because I don't like the topic, or I'm not as prepared as I wanted to be, or I'm going to have to speak in, public speaking. So you might find people doing this. In fact, if you watch people, when they hear surprising news or shocking news, it's not uncommon for the hand to go there naturally. They go, really? And this is part of sedating those emotions that are starting to well up. So this helps increase energy, it helps you feel more alert, and it helps shave off some of that rising anxiety that you might be feeling. So this is a real nice technique. It can be done very subtly. You don't have to make a big production. I am now stimulating K27. No, you just be real low-key about it. No one will ever know. And you might actually feel a little something happen. In fact, probably the first couple of times you do this, you're going to feel maybe a little bit off, or maybe you'll feel like your eyes just opened up a little bit wider. So don't be surprised, because this is very effective. Now this next exercise is called the Lazy 8, and you're going to have something to write with, and I've got a whiteboard. And what you want to do is, starting in on your paper, you want to make sure your paper is lined up and that the center of the paper is lined up with the center of you, and starting with the center of your 8, and I know it's an infinity sign, but we call it the Lazy 8 because it's catchy. You want to start drawing that infinity sign, and you're going to be going up and out and over, down, up, and then go over to the other side. So you can see I'm drawing my 8, and I'm trying very hard to make sure everything is within midline. So what you're doing with this is that you are engaging the left side of your brain, and you're engaging the right side of your brain. And you're doing it with this hand. So guess what you need to do? Well, the next thing you need to do is take your other hand, your non-dominant hand, because you very likely started with your dominant hand, and do the same thing. And you're just going to trace it. You're going to trace and go from right to left, and up and down, and out and in, all of those fields of motion with the other hand. Now I can't do it with without having a third hand. I've only got 2. But now you want to have both hands on your pen, and you want to continue to do that tracing, and this time with both hands. Now what is that doing for you? Well, it's crossing all of the different fields of eye motion, number one. It's also getting your body to cross midline so that you're engaging the right side of your brain and the left side of your brain, and they're working together. So that's the whole purpose of this Lazy 8, is to go through all of these fields of motion with your hands. Your eyes will trace them as well, and you will activate different parts of your brain. Now when you do that, It's going to increase your awareness. It will make you feel a little bit more alert. You might feel a little dizzy when you do it the first few times. That's not uncommon because now your brain's fully functioning instead of relying more on one side than the other. It will make you feel uncomfortable. Don't be surprised if you feel very uncomfortable the first dozen times you do this. Eventually, it will be very easy. I've been doing this so long that this is very easy for me, but I still do this. This is a technique that I used all the way through grad school, all the way through college, my undergrad years as well as through my graduate level years. And I have continued to teach this to any student that I see who struggles with test anxiety. This has been something that has helped tremendously shave off a lot of anxiety. And I know the students are using it because I teach them this and I tell them, write it on your exam. I don't care where you write on your exam. All I grade is what that little part over here that's designated for me to grade, and anything else is yours. So if you need to write these 100 times, go ahead and do it. So I know students do this and I see grades improve. All right, so what if you don't have a big piece of paper and you still want to do this? Well, the next exercise is for you. So let's say that you're someplace or you can't write on your paper. What are you going to do? Well, you can actually just use your own body and do the same motion. Make sure your eyes track. So the way that you would do this alternate method is to interlace your fingers. Again, you're integrating right and left when you do that. And I recommend laying your thumbs side by side. You don't have to. You can certainly cross them if you feel like it. I like to just do that because it gives me a focal point. I tend to watch my thumbnails when I do this. And with your hands, I'm going to go off to the side here. With your hands, you want to make sure you're midline, and then you're going to move your hands through that figure 8. So you'll be going up and out and down and up and around, and then the same thing. And it's very important that you let your eyes track as you go through that motion. You want your eyes to be tracking because your eyes also need to be moving. Your eyes are great for getting your brain to be stimulated. So make sure your eyes are tracking that motion as you do this. Now this is really going to feel strange when you do it the first few times. This is the one where I get the most resistance with students when I'm teaching it. They do this and then they'll back off and they'll try to shake it off. That's you engaging your brain in a way that it's not used to. So it's okay to challenge that and go through it a couple of times, give it a good go. And here's the other thing. I didn't talk about this on the other slide, but reverse the direction. Boy, your brain loves that. That's like exercise for your brain. Your brain's like, whoa, 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 something new and novel. Woohoo, let's do it. Your brain likes novelty. So yeah, go in both directions. Go in both directions, and it'll help stimulate your brain. And with that, my friends, we are done. Now, there are handouts available for those last 3 exercises to help you make sure you're doing everything correctly. So be sure to grab the PDFs for that, and good luck on your next exam. Bye-bye.